The Battle of Warsaw refers to the decisive Polish victory in 1920 at the apogee of the Polish-Soviet War. Poland, on the verge of total defeat, repulsed and defeated the invading Red Army. It was, and still is, celebrated as a great victory for the Polish people over Russia and communism. As Soviet forces invaded Poland in summer 1920, the Polish army retreated westward in disorder. The Polish forces seemed on the verge of disintegration, and observers predicted a decisive Soviet victory. The Battle of Warsaw was fought from August 12 to 25, 1920 as Red Army forces commanded by Mikhail Tukhachevsky approached the Polish capital of Warsaw and the nearby Modlin fortress. On August 16, Polish forces commanded by Józef Pilsudski counterattacked from the south, disrupting the enemy's offensive, forcing the Russian forces into a disorganized withdrawal eastward and behind the Neman River. Estimated Russian losses were 10,000 killed, 500 missing, 30,000 wounded, and 66,000 taken prisoner, compared with Polish losses of some 4,500 killed, 10,000 missing, and 22,000 wounded. The defeat crippled the Red Army. Vladimir Lenin, the Bolshevik leader, called it an enormous defeat for his forces. In the following months, several more Polish follow-up victories saved Poland's independence and led to a peace treaty with Soviet Russia and Soviet Ukraine later that year, securing the Polish state's eastern frontiers until 1939. Prelude. In the aftermath of World War I, Poland fought to preserve its newly regained independence, lost in the 1795 partitions of Poland, and to carve out the borders of a new multinational federation from the territories of their former partitioners, Russia, Germany, and Austria-Hungary. At the same time in 1919, the Bolsheviks had gained the upper hand in the Russian Civil War, having dealt crippling blows to the Russian White Movement. Vladimir Lenin viewed Poland as a bridge to bring communism to Central and Western Europe, and the Polish-Soviet War seemed the perfect way to test the Red Army's strength. The Bolsheviks' speeches asserted that the revolution was to be carried to Western Europe on the bayonets of Russian soldiers and that the shortest route to Berlin and Paris lay through Warsaw. The conflict began when Polish head of state Józef Pilsudski formed an alliance with the Ukrainian nationalist leader Szymon Petlura, and their combined forces began to overrun Ukraine, occupying Kiev on May 7. The two sides were embroiled in the Polish-Ukrainian War, amidst competing territorial claims. After early setbacks against Poland in 1919, the Red Army was overwhelmingly successful in a counter-offensive in early 1920 that nullified the Polish Kiev operation, forcing a Polish retreat. By mid-1920, Poland's very survival was at stake and foreign observers expected it to collapse at any moment. The Russian strategy called for a mass push toward the Polish capital, Warsaw. Its capture would have had a major propaganda effect for the Russian Bolsheviks, who expected the fall of the Polish capital not only to undermine the morale of the Poles, but to spark an international series of communist uprisings and clear the way for the Red Army to join the German Revolution. The Russian 1st Cavalry Army under Semyon Budyonny broke through Polish lines in early June 1920. The effects of that were dramatic. Budyonny's success resulted in a collapse of all Polish fronts. On July 4, 1920, Mikhail Tukhachevsky's Western Front began an all-out assault in Belarus from the Berezina River, forcing Polish forces to retreat. On July 19, the Red Army seized Grodno, and on July 28, it reached Białystok. On July 22, the Brest fortress was captured. Orders of battle. Polish 3 fronts, 7 armies, a total of 32 divisions. 46,000 infantry, 2,000 cavalry, 730 machine guns, 192 artillery batteries, and several units of tanks. Fronts. Northern Front, 250 kilometers, from East Prussia, along the Vistula River, to Modlin. 5th Army 1st Army, Warsaw 2nd Army, Warsaw, Central Front, 4th Army, between Deblin and Koch, 3rd Army, between south of Koch and Brody, Southern Front, between Brody and the Dniester River. Russian battle plans. Polish. By the beginning of August, the Polish retreat had become more organized, as their supply lines were steadily shortened. At first, Joseph Pilsudski wanted to stop the Soviets at the Bug River and the city of Brest-Litovsk, but the Soviet advance resulted in their forces breaching that line, making that plan obsolete. On the night of August 5–6, Pilsudski, staying at the Belvedere Palace in Warsaw, conceived a revised plan. In the first phase, it called for Polish forces to withdraw across the Vistula River and defend the bridgeheads at Warsaw and at the Weeps River, a tributary of the Vistula southeast of Warsaw. A quarter of the available divisions would be concentrated to the south for a strategic counter-offensive. Next, Pilsudski's plan called for the 1st and 2nd Armies of General Joseph Haller's Central Front to take a passive role, facing the Soviet main westward thrust and holding their entrenched positions, Warsaw's last line of defense, at all costs. At the same time, the 5th Army under General Vladislav Sikorski, subordinate to Haller, would defend the northern area near the Modlin Fortress. When it became feasible, they were to strike from behind Warsaw, thus cutting off Soviet forces attempting to envelop Warsaw from that direction, and break through the enemy front and fall upon the rear of the Soviet northwestern front. Additionally, 5 divisions of the 5th Army were to protect Warsaw from the north. General Franciszek Latinuk's 1st Army would defend Warsaw itself, while General Bolesław Rogers' 2nd Army was to hold the Vistula River line from Góra Kalwaria to Deblin. The crucial role, however, was assigned to the approximately 20,000-strong, newly formed task force, under the personal command of Pilsudski. This unit, composed of the most elite Polish units from the Southern Front, was to be reinforced by General Leonard Skiaszy's 4th Army and General Zygmunt Zielinski's 3rd Army. After retreating from the Bug River area, those armies had not moved directly toward Warsaw but had crossed the Weeps River and broken off contact with their pursuers, thus confusing the enemy as to their whereabouts. The assault group's assignment was to spearhead a rapid offensive from their southern position in the Vistula-Weeps River Triangle. They were supposed to advance north, targeting a weak spot that the Polish intelligence thought to have found in between the Soviet western and southwestern fronts, where their communications relied on the weak Mazir group. The aim of this operation was to throw the Soviet Western Front into chaos, and separate it from its reserves. According to the plan, Sikorski's 5th Army and the advancing assault group would meet near the East Prussian border, leaving the Soviets trapped in an encirclement. Although based on fairly reliable information provided by Polish intelligence and intercepted Soviet radio communications, the plan was called amateurish by many high-ranking army officers and military experts, from Polish officers to the advisors from the French military mission to Poland, who were quick to point out Pilsudski's lack of formal military education. Criticism was levied on the logistical side, as suggested concentration points were as far as 100 to 150 miles from many Polish units, most of them engaged on the front lines, and all of that a mere week before the planned date of the counterattack. All regrouping was within striking distance of the enemy, if Pilsudski and his staff mistimed when the Soviet offensive would begin. The Polish counterattack and even the cohesion of the entire Polish front would be in chaos. Pilsudski himself admitted in his memoirs that it was a gamble. He decided to go forward with it due to the defeatist stance of politicians, fear for the safety of the capital, and the prevailing feeling that if Warsaw were to fall, all would be lost. Only the desperate situation persuaded other army commanders to go along with it, as they realized that under the circumstances it was the only possible way to avoid a devastating defeat. The plan seemed so desperate and inept, that when a copy of it was intercepted by the Soviets, it was discarded as a poor deception attempt. The authorship of the plan is a matter of some controversy. Due to Pilsudski's political image, he was largely unpopular with the right wing of Polish politics. Furthermore, Paderewski told top Allied leaders that Weygand had the idea. Paderewski knew better, but he was trying to use American support for a comeback in Polish politics. After the battle, many reports suggested that the plan was in fact prepared either by the French general Maxime Weygand or by the Polish chief of staff Tadeusz Jordan Rozwadowski. According to recent research, the French military mission proposed only a minor tactical counter-attack of 2 divisions towards Minsk-Mazowiecki. Its aim would have been to push the Red Army 30 kilometers back in order to ease subsequent ceasefire negotiations. On the other hand, General Rozwadowski's plan called for a deeper thrust into Russian lines from the area of Wietz. However, Pilsudski proposed a large-scale operation, with significant forces committed to beating the enemy forces rather than merely pushing them back. The plan was opposed by the French mission, which did not believe that the Polish army would be able to regroup after a 600-kilometer retreat. Nonetheless, for many years, a myth persisted that it was the timely arrival of Allied forces that had saved Poland, a myth in which Weygand occupied the central role. Davies points out Pilsudski was left with only one serious possibility, a counter-offensive to the right of center, at a point where a strike force could be assembled from both northern and southern fronts. He pondered and checked these considerations during the night of 5 to 6 August, ruminating alone in his study at Belvedere in Warsaw. In the morning, he received Rozwadowski and together they worked out the details. Rozwadowski pointed out the value of the river Wietz. By the evening, Order No. 8358 thirds was ready and issued. Gen. Weygand admitted in his memoirs that La Victoire était polonaise, Le Plan polonaise, L'Armée polonaise, Russian Mikhail Tukhachevsky planned to encircle and surround Warsaw by crossing the Vistula River, near Włocławek, to the north and south of that city, northwest of Warsaw, and launch an attack from the northwest. With 24 divisions in 4 armies under his command, he planned to repeat the classic maneuver of Ivan Paskevich, who in 1831, during the November uprising, had crossed the Vistula at Torun and reached Warsaw practically unopposed, crushing the Polish uprising. This move would also cut the Polish forces off from Gdansk, the only port open to shipments of arms and supplies. The main weakness of the Russian plan was the poorly defended southern flank, secured only by the Pinsk marshes and the weak Mazir Group. That unit consisted of the 57th Infantry Division, 8,000 strong, and acted as the link between the Soviet 2 fronts. Davies argues that the Soviet failure was caused by its tardiness in moving forces in for a frontal attack on Warsaw. By contrast, the Poles were speedy, making every day's delay a liability to the Soviets. Furthermore, there was poor coordination between the Soviet Western Command and the 3 armies of the Southwestern Command. In the political sphere, Davies argues, there was too much friction inside the Soviet command. According to the historian Thomas Fiddick, rumors of disobedience to orders on the Soviet side by General Semyon Budyonny, or possibly even Joseph Stalin, were baseless. Moscow had decided for political reasons to reinforce the Crimean front at the expense of the Polish front. It meant it was replacing its goals of Europe-wide communist revolution with a sort of peaceful coexistence with the West amidst internal consolidation.